We've got an arithmetic series. We know the sum of the first 15 formulas. So that's already telling me maybe I'm going to need to use one of my two sum formulas because I know something about a sum. I also know the d value, and I know term 15. I'm supposed to see if I can find out the first three terms of the sequence. So if I were to look at my formulas, if I would say, and whenever I'm looking at my formulas, I always pick the smaller formula first, just because it looks like it's easier to manage. So I'm going to start with this one. And I ask myself, do I have enough information here so that I could plug in everything except for one value? Well, I don't know Sn, but I do know S15. So I would be able to say that when n is 15, I can plug in 93.75 for Sn. And that happens when n is 15. Well, if I use n is 15, that means that this n would have to be 15 as well. Do I know term 1? No. So this is something I still don't know. Do I know term 15? Yes. It's 11.5. And then this whole thing is still divided by 2. So using that first formula and plugging things in, I realize that I know everything except for term 1. So now we use our algebra skills to solve for term 1. Now, when I talk about our algebra skills, you know with an equation that what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side. Our goal is to get term 1 all by itself. So any suggestions on how we should start? Well, no, go ahead. There's more than one right way to do it. So what were you going to say, Haley? You could divide the 15 by 2, and then you would get 7.5. That is fine. Perfect. So we could do that. What would you do next? You could distribute. This 7.5 could go to both of those. 93.75. 7.5 times term 1 plus, and then 11.5 times 7.5 is, yes, 86.25. Now you could subtract that 86.25 on both sides. And you would get 7.5 equals 7.5 times term 1. Divide both sides by 7.5. And term 1 is equal to 1. Okay? This is one way of you look at where your equation is at and you decide what is something that I could do. We started by dividing the 15 by 2 and going from there. Other people said, well, you could have distributed first. That would have worked as well. And if you didn't like the 2 on the bottom, what's the opposite of dividing by 2? You could multiply both sides by 2. That would also give you the same answer. So there's more than one way to go about the algebra, but we chose this way. Now it asked us to find the first 3 terms. Now that we know that the first term, term 1 is 1, and we know that the d value is 0.75, we could just add 0.75 and say, well, term 2 has to be 1.75. And if I add 0.75 again, term 3 will be 2.5. So this idea of looking at the formulas we have, can you plug in the information? Do I recognize that when I choose n to be 15, 15 has to be the same for all of the n's? You'd have to, once you decide I want sum 15, then term 15 goes with that. If you're finding the sum of the first 8 terms, then n would be 8, and you'd be using term 8. So you have to make sure that you understand that that n value is the same throughout the whole formula. Questions you can do for this one. I already assigned 5 and 6. Here's 7, 10, 15, and if you want to give yourself a challenge, 16 is a challenge.